Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm Chris Eversman. I'm your airport director, and welcome to the Jim Hamilton L.B. Owens Airport. Our airport on Saturday the 24th? Or Sunday? Sunday. Will be 86 years old. We are the oldest public use airport in the Midlands of South Carolina, and we are the second oldest public use airport in the state of South Carolina. So we've been around a while. If you want to see a little bit about our history, you can look at that lovely banner up in the back, which was developed by none other than Miss Renwick there. She did an outstanding job on it. And that kind of gives you an idea of our history. So and we'll talk a little bit about it in the course of the presentation. Again, the name of the airport today is Jim Hamilton L.B. Owens Airport. I say today because it was renamed within the last couple of years to recognize the contributions of Mr. Jim Hamilton. Jim was, for about a 40-year period, the head of first it was Midlands Aviation, then it was Jim Hamilton Aviation. That was the FBO, or fixed base operator, that runs the airport day to day. And Jim was also volunteered to manage the airport on behalf of Richland County. So the name was changed, and that's where we stand today. You'll also hear it referred to as CUB, C-U-B. Every airport has a 3-character identifier assigned by the FAA. And ours is CUB, and it probably is the extraction from Columbia, the city in which we are located. Probably COL was taken by some other airport in Columbia, maybe, in another Columbia. So CUB, that's our identifier. And we will, with that said, get on. Kind of an overview, going to breeze through this because I know I only have about 2.5 hours to go. So, a couple of things we're going to talk about, and kind of informal. So, if something you have a burning need to ask a question, please feel free to. And we'll also have a section at the end for questions. This is our mission statement, both our primary mission statement as well as our secondary mission statement. Point out a couple of things. First of all, safe and efficient. 90% or so of our development costs historically have been borne by the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. Another 5% comes from the state, and about another 5% is local. And those percentages have varied over time with different programs, but generally speaking, the FAA is a very strong participant and partner in the development of this airport. And their criteria whenever they consider airport development projects is safety and efficiency. So we want to incorporate that into our motto. Another thing to point out is general aviation, all right? Unlike Columbia Metropolitan Airport or Charlotte Douglas, which has scheduled service and a lot of cargo operations and things like that, we are general aviation. Small planes. It's kind of everything other than the big jets that service, a commercial carrier airport. Transportation and economic development. General aviation airports really like to press the fact that, hey, the CEO for a corporation that is interested in setting up shop here in the Midlands, they don't come in on the Greyhound. They come in on the corporate jet, right? Okay? So we really like to press economic development or emphasize economic development. That's good. We've got a lot of aircraft owners here, and they kind of they enjoy flying, and they may fly for sport or for hobby on the weekends, and they may use it for their business or personal or business during the week. So we really like to talk about economic development, and that's good. This is an example of what we call our fleet mix, which are kind of the different types of aircraft that will operate in and out of here routinely. Our design aircraft, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, is a Cessna Citation, and that's right there. You can see that is a jet, but it's a small jet. But we do have, like, right next to it, a Bombardier Challenger. That's a much bigger jet with a maximum takeoff weight of 41,000 pounds. So that's pretty good size, but, you know, it's no 747. And just as an aside, to maybe allay some fears or some scuttlebutt or something like that, we are categorized as a B2, Bravo 2 airport. As you can see here, we do have plans, you know, maybe in 8 to 10 years of expanding our runway by about 780 feet, all right? When that is done, we will still be a B2 airport, which means we will serve the same type of aircraft both now and in the future, all right? So again, reliever, we just want to relieve the airspace around Columbia Metro of the smaller aircraft so that the larger aircraft can operate safely and efficiently. There we go. Okay, a little bit of history. As I said, we're 86 years old. Ground broken in 1929 and opened in April of 1930. And as you can see, back in the day, before Columbia Metro was even Columbia Army Air Base, which is what it started out as, we actually did have commercial service here, provided by both Eastern as well as Delta. In the mid-30s, a couple of years after we opened, we paved our runways. And with the onset of World War II, we did have an Army Air Force observation squadron based here. It was still a public use civilian airport, but we did have a military tenant, if you will. And then after the war, Dixie Aviation was the FBO, and again I said FBO stands for Fixed Base Operator. In 1962, Midlands Aviation took over and became the FBO, and that was the start of Mr. Hamilton's tenure here. In 1983, the runways were oriented, and I don't know if any of you all have been out to this airport or are familiar with what it used to be, but you can see what our runway orientation is now from this aerial photo here. But back in the day, we actually had a crosswind runway, and it was like an X, and it was oriented, the primary one was oriented in that direction. As you can see, that kind of makes sense where those soccer fields are today. Technically, Owens Field Park is actually part of the airport property, but it was kind of deemed surplus back when the runway was reoriented, and like I say, it was not needed any longer for aeronautical use. This terminal building opened a little over 10 years ago, September of 2005. And then in 2006, Eagle Aviation, which is our current FBO, they replaced Jim Hamilton Aviation. And then in 2009, again, I talked about our airport being renamed to include Mr. Hamilton in the title. Here's our organization chart, very simple, with the county council on top. County administrator works for the county council. One of the assistant administrators is my boss, and then here down on the bottom in the dregs is me. I am a Richland County employee. The airport, FAA terminology, they call the owner of the airport the sponsor. All right, so the airport sponsor is Richland County. And again, I'm an airport director, or I'm the airport director, and I'm a Richland County employee. There are two full-time employees assigned to two full-time Richland County employees assigned to the airport. I'm one of them, and we also have a maintenance man who does custodial tasks as well as grounds maintenance. And then there is a designated liaison between our airport commission and the county council, and that is Councilman Greg Pierce. And he has been the airport liaison for a number of years. I did mention our commission. There are 8 of the 9 commissioners pictured back there, a 9-member advisory board. They are appointed by Richland County Council and serve for 3-year terms. There is membership criteria that is established in our ordinance, and we include 2 members from the local community who are designated as neighborhood reps, as well as pilots and business professionals, and they meet on a bi-monthly basis. Okay, I've talked about some of this. I'm just going to highlight a few things. One is we are an uncontrolled airport. And that doesn't mean that anarchy reigns, at least not too often. But no, an uncontrolled airport is simply an airport without a control tower on site. And a lot of people recoil in horror when they hear that, but actually the vast majority of airports, both public and private, nationwide are uncontrolled. It's just that the airports that most people routinely fly in and out of, like Columbia Metro or Charlotte Douglas, have an air traffic control tower on site, so people assume that that is the norm. Note that I said we don't have an air traffic controller or an air traffic control tower on site. We do receive air traffic control services from Columbia Tower, even though they're 6 miles away and can't see us with the naked eye, but they can see on their radar. They have radio communication with the aircraft that are operating under what are called instrument flight rules, or IFR. So, and also visual flight rules. So, so anyway, we do get air traffic control services, and the pilots looking around, broadcasting their intentions on the radio, communicating with one another, works fine. And we have about, the official number, although I'm the first to admit this is very much inflated, but I am not the source of this number, is 56,000 annual operations. An operation is a takeoff or a landing, all right? And the FAA gives us that number. They look at the number of instrument flight rule operations, IFRs, for which a flight plan is always filed. And then they add a multiplier to that to account for VFR operations. So that's where that number comes from. But again, be perfectly honest with you, it is very much inflated. When a airport gets up to about 100,000 annual operations, that's when you're kind of in the threshold to be considered for an air traffic control tower. All right, so we're far away from that and probably will not make that in my lifetime. Going to skip over in the interest of time and just point out to you, we are very proud to be the home for the South Carolina Aviation Hall of Fame. And some of you all may have noticed out in the hallway out there as you came in, that is the Aviation Hall of Fame. And please feel free to look at it tonight or to come back at your leisure. It is open to the public, and we are open from 6 in the morning until 10 at night. All right, so come on back anytime if you can't sleep and it's 9:30, and you know, just come on back. And I say can't sleep, I don't mean to be disrespectful. There are a lot of noteworthy, in fact, the current NASA administrator is in the Aviation Hall of Fame, and as well as members of the, we just celebrated the anniversary of Doolittle's Raid. We have Doolittle's Raiders that are on there, and Charlie Duke, who walked on the moon, astronaut from South Carolina, he's out there. So a lot of great, noteworthy, truly aviation giants. And then Cessna Citation, I told you that is our design aircraft. A design aircraft based on its approach speed and its wingspan, that determines the geometry of the airfield, all right? So the separation of our taxiways and things like that is based on that aircraft using this airport. Noise abatement, if you look back, you see that great picture from about 86 years ago this weekend, and don't see too many houses in that picture, or too many trees for that matter. But if you look at the aerial now, one or two apartment complexes and houses have moved in. So we try to be good neighbors, and one of the things we do is have what is called a non-standard traffic pattern, so that aircraft operating routinely, either taking off or landing as they enter the pattern, either after they take off or before they land, both patterns for either runway end are over this industrial area and not over this residential area. Sometimes folks stray from that, but for the most part, it's pretty good. Our folks in our FBO advise folks, and for the most part, it works quite well. Again, kind of in the interest of time, we'll breeze through this a little bit. The most crucial piece of pavement on any airport is the runway. Ours is 5,011 feet in length and 75 feet in width. We do have a taxiway that goes parallel to it. We do have plenty of parking area on our apron, and that is either a Texas A&M game or a University of Georgia game. In all honesty, our busiest times are big home USC football games. We especially like it. It gives us even more reason to root for the Gamecocks because when they're hot, and we got a lot of competition, that really brings them in. I was commenting to someone today, seeing it from the air looks okay, but it's not really impressive. When you are on the ground and you see that number of aircraft on that apron, it really looks congested. Probably the busiest or the most aircraft that I've seen was the Alabama game in 2010. I don't think you could have shoehorned a single additional aircraft on that apron, and in fact there was overflow. There were folks parking in the grass and everything like that. We do have, most of our revenue comes from the lease of hangar space, and we have about 108 hangars, and that's a little bit deceptive because we got really big corporate hangars, and then we have the more conventional smaller T hangars. So that number's a little bit, well, don't mean deceptive, but that doesn't tell the whole story. And we're a gas station. Yes, sir.
What's the cost?
The cost varies on the size of the hangar, and it also varies dependent upon the terms of the lease. And what I mean by that is we've got a rate schedule. If you sign a 3-year lease, then you get the lowest available monthly lease rate. If you go to 2 years, there's a 10% increase, 1 year, a 10% increase, additional 10% increase, and on through 1 month, So it's dependent upon the length of the lease and also the size of the hangar. In very rough terms, a T hangar, and there are 18 of them in that building there, $170 a month, something like that. Corporate hangar, there are 2 in that big building, $600 plus a month. Okay, so that's kind of the range. All right.
Can the Gulfstream 5 fly in here?
Can it fly in here? Yes, but it doesn't. We don't routinely get ones that big, but they can. They can. Now, what we found, and again, don't want to take up too much time, but really more so than the facility limitations are insurance limitations of the aircraft. In other words, there are pilots and aircraft that can easily fly in and use our runway, but because of insurance concerns, it might not meet those minimums. Okay? Also, we are...
Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
We live in the southeast off of Garnet Ferry Road, and
Mhm.
keep seeing planes flying to there. Is there another airport there, especially a mini airport or something?
Well, now, depending on where you are, we've got McIntyre Joint National Guard Base, which has both fast movers as well as the Army helos.
It's like a little ones like coming in the fields there.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. There are some private airports throughout the state and in the Midlands, but I'm not familiar with anything out there.
Could somebody theoretically land there, but they'd have to have permission from somebody to do it?
Well,
If they have a big enough backyard, we want somebody to land there, could they? Or do we have to have a special permission from somebody to do that?
I don't know. I've never built a private airport, so I'm not sure. But like I say, they do exist. They do exist. Actually, there is a statewide atlas of airports that includes private fields that might have the answer in it.
Okay.
All right.
Excellent, nice.
Anyway, we are a gas station too. We've got a fuel farm, and our FBO dispenses fuel, both jet fuel as well as avgas for the piston-driven. Some of you all might be familiar with the Curtiss-Wright Hangar. That is this old building on the corner of the airport property, and that was the first permanent structure built by the Curtiss-Wright Corporation. Curtiss is Glenn Curtiss, Wright is the Wright brothers, so these are, no kidding, aviation pioneers. And there are probably only 6 of them standing nationwide, and we are, Lord willing, under contract to sell it to a developer who will restore it to its vintage original condition, and then his intention is to lease it out to a microbrewery. So we are hoping that that comes together, because collectively we have been trying probably for almost 20 years to restore the Curtiss-Wright Hangar, and to get it restored, especially using private funds, is going to be a great accomplishment. I talked about our fixed base operator, Eagle Aviation. They administer our hangar lease, sell fuel, collect our ramp fees, run a flight school, and they also operate out of CAE. About 2 years ago, we got another business based here at the airport, and that is Aircraft Maintenance Services. And they were formerly in Camden, but they wanted to, for various reasons, come here to CUB. And they are an FAA repair station and just received a Garmin dealership, so that was a big accomplishment for them. So we're very glad to have them, and for the activity that they bring to the airport. Other tenants at the airport are, again, general aviation aircraft owners. University of South Carolina, 2 aircraft here. One is the aircraft which supports the university, which is assigned to the president's office, and also the one that belongs to the Booster Club and supports the athletic department. We also have a law enforcement presence with Richland County Sheriff's Department, both their fixed wing and their rotary wing. We also have a great, vibrant chapter of the Experimental Aircraft Association, EAA, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what they do, one of the things they do. And then we also have the South Carolina Historic Aviation Foundation, and those folks are in the process of doing a partial restoration of a B-25, which crashed in 1944 and was underwater in Lake Greenwood for nearly 40 years. EAA 242 runs a program called the Young Eagles, and if you have a child or a grandchild between the ages of 6 and 18, and they would like to get a free, I say again free, orientation flight, weather permitting, they can come the second Saturday of each month right over there across the parking lot, and you'll see they always put a big banner out and everything else like that. One of only about 5 chapters nationwide that has flown 10,000 young eagles, so that's a great accomplishment, and we are very glad to have them here at the airport. Okay, budget and finance. What does this place cost? Well, first of all, 90% of our capital development is funded by the FAA. Another 5% comes from the state, and 5% is local. These are our, for the current fiscal year we're in, our personnel costs as well as our operations cost. And we, in fiscal 15, our revenue, operations revenue, this is Richland County's cut, is about $244,000. You're saying, well, wait a second, this thing doesn't pay for itself. Those 2 numbers aren't as big as that number, and that's absolutely true. That's why I put everything on the slides. Full disclosure, right? But there are a couple of things kind of below the line that maybe we like people to think about. First of all, the annual aircraft tax revenue is on the order of $240,000, all right? That money goes to the general fund. It doesn't go to the airport fund. but it goes to the general fund, and were it not for this airport, there wouldn't be the based aircraft here that would be generating that revenue, all right? So I think it's fair to consider that, even though it goes to the general fund. And then that does not, those numbers do not even address the economic impact. Remember, I talked about businessmen going in and out. I talked about FBO employees. I talked about Richland County employees. I talked about projects we got going on and contractor pay requests and things like that. The annual economic impact estimated, granted it was 2005, so it's a dated number, and the economy is not at all what it was back then. But the annual economic impact for this airport was estimated to be $14.8 million annually. So that's pretty significant. If you were to reduce that by half and even reduce it by 3/4, you would still see positive cash flow, if you will, and good economic sense to maintaining an airport to support this area. All right, so that's my, my little spiel. We do have a airport website and as well as a Facebook page, and I would invite you to please check us out and like us. And again, a poster expertly produced by Mrs. Renwick. And at that point, do I have any questions? I've either answered all your questions or you're tired. Good to go? All right, terrific. Well, thank you very much. Now,